Donald Jeffries. Author of Hidden History and Survival of the Richest. Host of The Donald Jeffries Show. Billy Ray Valentine. Host of the Infinite Fringe podcast. Researcher, truth seeker from the Bronx, New York. Tony Arterburn. Radio host, combat veteran, precious metals analyst, and alt historian. Together, they take on the headlines of the week, decode the disinformation, and plow through the mainstream propaganda. Unauthorized, unscripted, and unintimidated. This is America Unplugged.
Yes, it is America Unplugged, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I forget what episode this is, Don. It's like 180?
Billion, at least 1 billion, probably.
I had to go look at the feed. I forgot, but I was going to say it's episode, and then I'm like, wait, I don't remember anymore. We're way past 100. Billy Ray Valentine, not here today, but I do have the legendary Donald Jeffries, author of Hidden History. I mentioned you this week, Don, when I was on with Sam Tripoli, your good friend over at Tinfoil Hat, and he talked about writing the foreword to your newest book, and I talked about some of your past and working, in the 70s with Mark Lane and just being an OG conspiracy researcher, one of the greats, one of the all-time greats, and you don't give yourself enough credit, but I sure talked you up over on Tinfoil Hat.
I appreciate that. It's very nice of you.
Well, speaking of conspiracies and the conspiracy theory of history, we continue to, unfortunately, I don't want to be right a lot of times. It's kind of depressing, and it's certainly not as profitable to be wrong. Sometimes being wrong, you make a lot more money. But I am for the truth. That's one of my raison d'etre, is my goal as a human being is to live in the truth, do to the best of my ability. And so I wanted to lead off, Don. Well, obviously, we're going to talk about Epstein files and Ghislaine Maxwell and everything that goes with that, and the whole why are we still talking about this? But something else entered the fray. Did anybody else notice that sort of an eclipse moment where we're back to Russiagate? It happened overnight. And then you have Tulsi Gabbard coming out talking about James Clapper's involvement and Comey. We're drudging up all this up. Talk about the news that never dies. Or the thing that never dies. This is the creature. We pull this up out of the depths, and now we've got Russiagate back. So Russiagate is in the forefront. Donald Jeffries, mathematical probabilities of this being an absolute psyop to make you forget about the fact that you're supposed to forget about Epstein.
I would say 99.9%. You meant before I start that Duke Valentino, I noticed, is in the chat room. I haven't seen him lately in my chat. Duke, please, I want to have you on my show. We'll talk about Ireland, and I'll have a show where you talk about what's going on there. Email me at authorjeffries@gmail.com, authorjeffries@gmail.com. Email me and I have you on the show, okay? So you have more chance to talk yourself about it, more than I can say here. But I think that this is, it's years too late. I mean, obviously the fact that suddenly they're mentioning this right after the Epstein fiasco. I mean, this would have had more, legs to it if this had been something Tulsi and Trump concentrated on from the beginning of the second administration. Hey, we're gonna take these guys to task, because I mean they should be able to indict Comey and Hillary Clinton. Like I say, there's that CIA memo from John Brennan himself where he's just revealing, and he does say that I think it's wrong to say Barack Obama was the ringleader. I don't see his name in there quite as much, but where he says that, Obama was at this meeting, and we talked about how Hillary, this is her idea. She wants to, and this is an official CIA memo, it's not a conspiracy theory. She wants to blame Russia, for Trump colluding with Russia for, in the election. So it's out there. They know that. There's a lot of there. But I don't expect anything to come of this, because you're talking about big names. Hillary Clinton should be at the center of it. And Barack Obama, the idea they're trotting him out is ridiculous, because the people that cheered Trump's the Supreme Court decision that shielded him, that said, which really put presidents above the law, which is ridiculous, because by that nature, the way it's worded, it says while his duties in office, but pretty much any crime that a president's going to commit is probably going to be related to his duties. So basically, they made it so he has immunity. So again, the Trump fans cheer that. Now, though, this is going to apply to Barack Obama too. They're one of their sworn enemies, and Trump in all his eloquence came out and pretty much stated that. It said, "Yeah, I think he'll be protected, and he has to be big. He has to be big." Which what the hell that means, I don't know. But again, it just the Trumpenstein project is just it's winding down now. It's kind of like it's jumped the shark big time. I mean, the Trumpenstein project has jumped the shark. And so I don't know what's going to happen here, but the last thing I expect is an honest investigation of the Russiagate hoax, which was a hoax, unlike the Epstein list, and to see prosecutions of people like Comey and McCabe and um, was it Peter Strzok and the other people in the FBI, obviously Hillary Clinton. It would be wonderful to see. It'd be finally, hey, somebody finally got arrested. I don't think so. I think what you're going to see is more of what they bragged about. I saw all over conspiracy media, another supposed big bust of pedophiles nobody's ever heard of by the FBI. The FBI is always busting these pedophiles that they never have any power. But these are perverts that online that they entrap them like the narcs entrap drug users. They get them, they pretend they're a 14-year-old girl, and they're ridiculous enough to fall for it, and there are no victims involved. I stress that. They're never any victims. So most of their arrests are for people that not only did nothing, but didn't even know any, potential victims. So, but that's what they're bragging about.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, it certainly it changes the narrative. Look how magic this is, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to bring up all the Steele dossier. I'd forgotten about that. The Steele dossier. By the way, it was funny is watching Comey talk about that, and that the Steele dossier originated from the Bush campaign. It was Jeb exclamation point that his $150 million that he raised for nothing. Remember, clap, please. When he tell people to clap. That funded, and then that funded the Steele dossier originally, and then filtered over into the Hillary camp, and then intelligence used it, or the establishment used it, and they wiretapped and did all the other stuff. That's all true. And by the way, we've already had a first Trump administration. Why wasn't this done then? It's bizarre, right? So that's why I just, whenever this comes up, and it does exactly, if you sample, because I was around, I've been around people that watch Fox News, and they're done thinking about Epstein. Like they're done thinking about how crazy that was, that we were gaslit and told that, that there's not a list. There was a list. It's 10,000 hours of stuff, and there's child pornography, all this stuff. And we're told now, no, there's not a list. And why are you still talking about it? And oh, by the way, remember Russiagate?
Yeah.
Does anybody else find that just totally convenient? And then Tulsi Gabbard, who, and it's so sad to watch, somebody that I had a little bit of hope in, it'd be outside of the establishment, especially being anti-war in some ways, being a veteran, and just caved on the intelligence issue with Iran. That's something that I talked about when I was out with the folks at Tinfoil Hat, the crew there. And I think that episode's out today, by the way, if you want to listen to it, folks. But I talked about it. I said, it's been only 30 days. So think about the 30 days we've had, Don. 30 days ago, or 31 days ago or so, that's when we hit Iran. Okay, so the lead up to that was this total betrayal of like, we're going to get out of these foreign wars. We're not going to be involved in this. We're going to put America first, all that. So that started to crumble. You have that famous interview with Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz, this splitting of MAGA. And then it culminates within that 30 days. You have Trump coming out and saying with that press conference with Pam Bondi, saying, are we still talking about this? And throwing it to her and say, is this still on our list? And this whole thing of Epstein, why are you still talking about this? That was such a devastating series of events for MAGA. Now they've pulled this card. That's all. The only thing I can think that they had left besides taking us to war. And now we're back, again, I think people are starting to scurry back into their perspective, cubby holes or whatever pigeonholes they've been put into politically. And it's unfortunate to watch. Do you think that this faux battle. It's not real. There's no way this is real. There's never going to be a perp walk or anything like that for any of these people. But do you think this goes a long way to bring MAGA back into just being MAGA?
Well, I think at some point they're going to have to give them something. That's why I say I don't know if there is a sacrifice they can make there, because they apparently don't want to take down any names. I don't know. Is Comey? Could he? I don't think so. But without that, I think even the MAGA crowd, especially on the because even the ones that are loyal to Trump understand this is curious timing. Right after the Epstein stuff, and they're and now Trump is saying he's going to release everything on the Epstein list, but I thought there was no Epstein list. What is well, what are you releasing? You said there was nothing there. So I that's why I can only look at this as scripted, Tony, because it doesn't make no politician can be that stupid. It's impossible. And the people around him can't be that stupid. And no politician is ever, they all mostly on flip-flop and they don't do what they say, but Trump is just, he is a Hall of Famer with this. I mean, he is the grunt of flip-flopping. I mean, this guy just goes back and forth constantly. So I don't expect any kind of honest investigation out of that. And I think that the Democrats will quickly revert to nature. Now they're for once they want something released, which I don't know why, because if there is any kind of list, it's going to be filled with darlings of the left, apparently. And so apparently they're not worried about that if they can just get Trump on there. But so I don't really. But again, are they doing this because they know it's never going to be released, and so that makes them look good? I assume that's what I would say, because these people have never. I saw was it Ron Wyden, and that guy's been in the Senate forever, and I don't think he's never said anything remotely approaching truth, and he was talking about the Epstein thing and everything. So I think they're just confident that there's it's not going to be, or whatever it is. And of course if Trump is on the list and something gets released, then he'll just claim it's fake. He's already kind of said they're going to put out a fake list, and for all I know, the Democrats can come up with something where Trump is the only one on the list. I don't know. Donald Trump, and that's it. But maybe a few people that have died or something they might want to get rid of. But yeah, this is it's interesting theater, and the timing is curious on Russia, but that stuff should have been. They should have gone. That should have been his first administration, because obviously that was responsible for why he was distracted so much during the first administration and couldn't do anything, was because the Russia, the Steele dossier nonsense. Sure, why wouldn't you go after all that? But he never did, and never showed any indication of wanting to until now. And I don't believe, like I said, I think I'll believe it when I see it. But I would, we'll see what happens to Tulsi Gabbard's investigation. But and this is interesting because it's also knocked lovely Representative Luna, who's my one of my favorites in Congress as well, who's talked a lot about. She was very vocal about the Epstein list too, and she's obviously about JFK and 9/11 and all that. That's kind of receded into the background now. So we'll see. Just much like Doge, which is Doge is I guess it's Doge is in a landfill somewhere or something. I don't know. With Elon Musk.
Yeah, long ago, the days of the $5,000 rebate, and we're going to get to the bottom of wasteful spending. Those days are long gone, and it's funny in a short amount of time, Don, in a short amount of time. And like I said, the last 30 days, look at the amount of change and upheaval that has taken place, and the disintegration of the political movement all in once to just filter back into Russiagate. I don't know. I give a big yawn to it. I don't think there's going to be any real revelations. I think they'll just drag it through. And I think now is a great opportunity to look around and figure out whatever the hell else is going on, because this isn't what you should be focused on. We have to talk about it because it's obviously a psyop of some kind to recycle things and distract from the fact that we just had a catastrophic loss of cabin pressure for the MAGA movement. And just like Twisted said in the chat, Trump making Jerome Powell look like a good man is the biggest news story. It's so true. Yeah. Don, did you see Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve, like at the new wing or do something they're building, and they're both wearing construction hats? Have you seen this? They're both wearing hard hats, him and Jerome Powell. And
cool. Two hardworking men.
They had that's right, and they had this awkward back and forth between the two, and Trump's confronting him on live television about certain budgeting and other things, and Jerome Powell just standing there and they're both wear hard hats, and it's really fascinating to watch, Don. And again, I still think something else is in the works right now for the U.S., for the global order. We're definitely in a run out the clock situation, not to get too, contrarian off the map here, but I don't think that what we're watching in this news cycle is really what's happening. I think it's a much bigger picture of our standing in the world, what's happening with the monetary system, and what's happening internally. There's it's a interesting thing to watch, and certainly hard to keep up with. I don't know. Are you enjoying your current wave of psyops, Don?
Yeah, well, and Matthew Burns brings up a good point in the chat room about the Redskins getting their name back, and this is typical Trump. Trump, first of all, bragged about how this is winning to the Trump crowd. How he's going to get Coca-Cola to put cane sugar back in instead of corn syrup, which I don't understand. Bobby Kennedy should be talking about that more than anything. The high fructose corn syrup, which is in everything, and it's only in America. It doesn't need to be, and it could easily be taken out. I haven't heard him talk much about that, and he should. But the Trump, that's typical, and I don't even know if that's true or not. But because Mexico, you go to Mexico, you may not be able to drink the water, but apparently the Coke is safer for you to drink there because it has cane sugar the way it used to here. So, but that'll be the kind of thing that his supporters will brag about. Yeah, see, you got sugar back in Coke. And then this other thing, even more ridiculous, how he's, not going to approve the new stadium unless the Commanders go back to their original Redskins, which of course all sports fans in Washington, 99% of them would love that, certainly. And, but again, it's just, that's not exactly making America great again. I don't think it's not exactly the kind of big promises he made, but that's Trump. And just like, coming up with Alligator Alcatraz, that's got Trump written all over it. It's just a stupid name, and people can fantasize about it and falling in the water and getting chewed up by alligator. Yes, but I mean, it doesn't solve the problem, but that's Trumpenstein right there. So yeah, it's one psyop after another, and I don't know, but we talked before, is that I keep stressing this, and I hope I'm not proven wrong with the sudden nuclear explosion in World War III, but they have been hanging this damn World War III over head. I think as long as I've been doing podcasting. I mean, how many years on here have we started every Monday night with Rents, the same kind of thing? We're closer to World War III than we've ever been. And Alex Jones has begun every broadcast since Trump entered the White House, and we're closer to World War III than we've ever been. And even with the attack, everybody thought with the attack on Iran, that's kind of faded into the background now. These stories have such a short shelf life. Luckily, as you mentioned with Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz and the other things, Israel is coming under more focus, and they're getting more criticism than they ever have before. But it just kind of, what happened there? I mean, if this is such an issue of paramount importance, and I don't think Israel's doing too much now. I don't think anything different. We haven't done anything else, so it doesn't look like World War III to me. And so I think these were being played with all the time. And the bottom line is things don't get better for the vast majority of the people, and that's what we would like to see. It's things that would happen, whether it's the big beautiful bill. I just wrote an article on that for American Free Press, and it's like there isn't much beautiful in it in terms for most people. I mean, you could argue that. Maybe there's a little something in it for small business tax breaks, but most of the breaks are going to go to big business. I don't see much in them. As always, even something for Social Security, like I haven't interested in that. I don't know if it's going to affect me, but it's Social Security recipients, most of them don't pay taxes on it now because they don't make enough outside income to qualify. You don't have to make much, but they don't make any typically. But so this, I think, will mainly benefit maybe the people that are making a lot of money other than Social Security. But that's typically what happens to the tax cuts. The tax cuts, the ones with the highest income get the biggest tax cuts. But that's Republicanism 101. So as I said, this big, beautiful bill is something that a President Bush could have passed easily.
Speaking of the big, beautiful bill and all that will entail, certainly currency creation, in line with what we've seen the last 50 plus years, and then accelerating the last 5 or 6 into 80% of all the dollars ever created. Look at this article from Zero. You were talking about this. I had to go. Even me, even as skeptical as I am, and knowing what I know, this seemed way out of line. But Treasury of the United States begins accepting Venmo donations to reduce the national debt. Did you see this, Don?
Well, I heard about that, and again, to me, anybody that would voluntarily contribute to this mess and pay down this fake debt, which is not our debt, I don't think they should be able to vote anymore. One of many categories which I would eliminate. No, so you lost your right to vote. I'm sorry if you're that ridiculous, but I know there are people out there that'll do that. I'm gonna do
this
my
is an
part.
IQ test.
Yeah, I'm gonna send $50 to pay down that debt. I mean, first of all, explain the debt to me, people. You know, the spotlight back in the 80s was talking about, you know, they were ahead of the time back then, and they talked about the debt should be repudiated. It's not a real debt.
It's not real.
It's not real. So, and why are we obligated to finance it? Taxpayers had nothing to do with this. We didn't, you know, engage in loans with China and places like that. I don't remember signing up for that. So why should we be responsible for bail? Well, we've already bailed the bankers out before, but a real populist in office, you know, right before we got rid of the Federal Reserve, would say we're repudiating the national debt. It's not real. Under this absurd fractional lending system we have, you know, 90% or more of the principal isn't real. So obviously none of the interest can be real. So these are bogus loans. But the public doesn't understand that when you tell them, oh, yeah, you got to. I mean, I heard people even when they were arguing with Doge, when they didn't want the $5,000, which I'm still waiting for my check, Tony. I don't know if you've gotten yours, but you know, I'm still waiting for that $5,000 check. But I saw so many people that said, no, I'd rather have it go to the debt. It's like, what? You know, how can you be? Really? So even if the debt was real, do you think $5,000 going to what is the debt? Is it's over $1 trillion? Is it trillions dollars?
So 37 trillion. 37 trillion. It goes up $1 trillion every 90 days.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
No, that's the pace that we're on. And yeah, that's the comment from Twisted there, and I just put up on the screen. We went from Doge checks for the people to government panhandling from the people.
Yes, exactly. Twisted. Yeah, Twisted's great. Good to see you're Twisted. Yeah, it's that's exactly what it is. And it's I mean, I knew when they said that, as I said at the time, and so I was a little giddy over Doge at first because I'd never seen it. Yeah, of course it all turned into nothing, as everything is apparently, but it was nice while it lasted briefly, having these disclosures, which I think were a drop in the bucket, and then just floating at the idea of giving you $5,000. And I said at the time, that would be the only thing I've ever gotten from the government in my life. I've got nothing in terms of services. What have I gotten? Harassment from the police, maybe. You know, no-win wars that make no sense. Infrastructure that's never repaired. But unfortunately, that talk's all gone, and we never got it. And this is unfortunately turning into Trump, the second term that, you know, just like the first term, you know, the same boss, the same term, the same as the old term that we're seeing with Trump, and it's a shame. So I don't expect anything, you know, from the Russia's or anything else at this point. I think we can just sit back and hope they keep the trumpet sign character at least mildly entertaining.
Yeah, they'll make sure you use your Cash Apps, your Venmo, ladies and gentlemen. They're gonna need them. We're going faster, and you know, it took us 200 plus years of our history to go 1 trillion in debt, and that's around 1980 when we hit that number, and now we're at 37 trillion in debt, and it's every 90 days we add another trillion. So I'm sure your generous Venmo donations will help.
Well, that'll knock that right out.
And speaking of which, that's a good segue into your article this week, Don, up on your Substack and DonaldJeffries.media. It's about the American dream. I was going to see if you wanted to cover some of the finer points of that. It's we seem to have drifted farther and farther away from what that actually is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and people, I can sound like a right-wing extremist much of the time now because the woke left is taking over. But this kind of stuff, survival of the richest, that's my wheelhouse. That's my heart, where my heart is. I'm a populist, and I feel for the younger people out there. I feel for the millennials and now Gen Z, and I don't think they have any hope. I'd like to be able to say they have hope, but they don't. And as a boomer that came in on the tail end of the boomers, I still had a pretty good deal, good maybe as the older boomers. But I think that you got to recognize that this is not the same country and it's not the same economy. And so that's what the article talks about, the things that you could do back then. And somebody like me, I have people see my house. It's a pretty big house in a nice neighborhood, and I didn't really do anything to deserve it. I just kind of lucked into it. And I'm those boomers that say I worked hard. I had, I goofed off a lot. And I took advantage of every loophole I could, and sold a little real estate, but not that much. But but I'm here, but that wouldn't be possible for somebody because, first of all, those kind of jobs don't exist that I had for people without college degrees. I was a community college dropout, and now I don't know what I'd be doing. I guess I'd be lucky, if I came along today, especially as radical as I just wouldn't be hired. I'd be fired everywhere from my back. I was always the same way on the jobs. I spoke my mind, and I was always taught, and people generally loved it. They liked hearing it because they really weren't hearing too many people talk like I was back then. But I was just kind of keeping up a radical, stream of radical talk all the time wherever you worked. And you couldn't do that now. I'd be fired. But I was able to make enough money because the jobs paid more back then. They had better benefits. And so I just feel for the young people today because I think that, I was able to achieve the American dream without even realizing that I was achieving it. And I don't think you can now because homeownership is very difficult for all but the lucky people in the top 20% of young people. The rest of the time, I mean, I can look around. I look at the little townhouse where we bought our townhouse when we first got married and scraped enough money together to buy this little 2-level townhouse by the railroad tracks. And it was 71,000, I think it was. But we lived there for 13 years, and through equity, we were able to make enough money and my real estate license came in handy for once for this house. It was an interesting set of circumstances where the people wanted to sell, and we knew the neighbors, and it was very lucky. But so we got into the neighborhood, and a great neighborhood. But it wouldn't be possible now because for just buying that same little townhouse by the railroad tracks is probably $350,000 now. And there's no young people that come on like blue collar worker like I was then. They could possibly afford that. So that's what needs to be, I think, talked about, but nobody's talking about that. That's why hopefully people read my Substack. They'll get a view they're not getting anywhere else.
Yeah, you quote George Carlin. I always love that. He says that's why they call it the American dream, because you'd have to be asleep to believe it.
Yeah,
and it's that's a dark observation of what you think of especially when you live in America 1.0. That's where I felt like I came from, and then the rules of the game switched right in the middle of the timeline, and when everything changed, that's why I feel like the rug was pulled out from underneath all of us. And you used to think about what that meant to be a part of the American dream. Obviously, my wheelhouse and things that I talk about is the manipulation of our money. I mean, if you want to see how the metrics of that, how everything falls apart, and really, like you talk about the Gen Z being priced out of the home market. They're priced out because wages don't go up, but the prices of things do. The wages don't match the debasement of the currency because the loss of purchasing power and of course the increase and expansion of the money supply causes inflation. Prices of goods rise, but those wages don't, and those jobs and everything that we told these younger people to do, which is a dead system. If you're following the the old rules and getting in line, and I got to go to college, and I get a college loan for that, and I can go into debt. I'm going to get a high-paying job, or the best I can get. I'll go get a 401k and all this stuff. You cannot outpace the debasement of currency with that model. You're already under the bus, been thrown under the bus at that time. And that's where we are, Don, is like everything that we've taught younger people and everything that we've taught and from the school systems is a serf mentality to get in line, get in debt, which is slavery. It's marking time. What is it? That long gray line, you get in that long gray line and you mark time until you die. And that, a lot of people get in there and they fall in that trap, and it's quiet desperation.
No, it is. Good to see my friend Australian Ben here posting under Freely Speaking. He talks about Australia, how they foreign property investors buying, and we see that here. We see, BlackRock and others. I mean, there was in our neighborhood, somebody a couple of years ago paid almost $1 million for one of the houses. These are not $1 million houses. You're ridiculous. But I didn't check up, but I can guarantee it was some kind of investor like that. And that's what's happening. And I think it's a conspiracy to try to keep people as serfs, to keep people renting, because if you have investors swoop in and buy up all these rental properties, obviously people can't, and then they can set the rents for what they want. And right now they're setting it for a ridiculous amount of money. So and that's the biggest problem. Back in my day, I think I try to remember. You probably could have rented a one-bedroom apartment. I want to think maybe $200 or under $200 a month. It was very cheap, but so it was something that you could work at 7-Eleven and do it, work at a gas station pumping gas, doing anything. Now for a good apartment, you can have older apartments that are dicey in terms of the neighborhood, the people there, and they're older. They might have window air conditioning units, whatever, and even they're going to be like $1,500 or something, maybe more a month for a one bedroom. But anything decent in my area is over $2,000 a month. That's just to rent an apartment. And how many people can afford that with the wages? Vince Agnelli's talking about our friend. The wages that they're paying as opposed to back in the. I give the example that I give it in the article. That I knew a guy that was a cashier at Safeway, which is a big grocery chain, back in the early 80s, and he was making $17 an hour then, and that would translate to $112,000 a year now. And I think they start Safeway cashiers off at less than $17 an hour now. This is in real money, not in terms of what it would be worth today, but in actual money. And as I say, make that make sense to me, because we're told, well, if we raise the price of McDonald's, we give these McDonald's workers $15 an hour, you'd be paying $50 for your Big Mac. Well, in my book Survival of the Richest, I talked about some 80-some-year-old guy that McDonald's was giving $100 million a year or two or something to attend a couple meetings a year. I mean, that would pay for a lot of hamburger flippers. So their excuses make no sense. And if that's the case, if we're told that the way economics works, you raise the minimum wage and the price of your product it has to go up, we're going to pass that cost on to consumers, but they don't pass the cost of golden umbrellas, or when they pay the Carly Fiorinas of the world $40 million to go away because they failed miserably. Somehow that cost isn't passed on to the consumers. There are huge increasing executive bonuses aren't cost on. Only if you raise the prices of the lowest levels of employee salaries, that'll be cost on. And then you have something like the Safeway thing, which I know personally. They can't explain that because obviously food prices were significantly lower in the early 80s than they are now. So how does the same company pay you a cashier less? I mean, in real terms, less than they did in the early 80s, because they'd have to pay them $112,000 a year now. And if people don't realize how things have changed back then because of unions, most of the grocery stores and places had good, strong unions. And so that's why they paid them so much. So back then, the cashier in a grocery store was a good career. Obviously, it was tantamount to a six-figure salary now. those are the kind of things that have changed in that. But again, this is why conservatives are so deadly. They're no answer to liberals because they're still living in, fast food jobs. They're for teenagers. Well, they used to be for teenagers. Now, sometimes they're for, 55-year-old people that were making six figures that got laid off and can't get another job.
Yeah.
I see that all the time. I see old people, working as cashiers in grocery stores and places, and it breaks my heart because I know they don't want to do it just to keep busy. I don't think, but it's indictment. But nobody's talking about this. Trump never talked about this. Bernie Sanders nibbles around the one thing he did say, and I mentioned in the article is that one of his better things is that nobody should be homeless who's working full time. And I think I put in there, was it 20 some percent or 40 some amazing percent of homeless supposedly in San Francisco or something are working. And that shouldn't happen. But it does happen because then it defeats the conservatives, or you just don't want to work. Well, actually, he is working. He's literally not making enough money to live anywhere but a tent. And so I don't know. I think it's that's why I continue to love Huey Long so much. Why I talk to him so much about it, because I talk about him so much because this is an issue. You talk about a winning issue. If somebody like me talking about this had great forces behind me and could push me politically, they wouldn't need too much propaganda. That issue would light a fire into the working class because they all can relate to it. Everybody that has a job can relate to the fact, well, we don't get raises anymore. And if somebody like me tells them, in my job, which wasn't great back in the day, for many years, we got 2 raises every year. We got a 6% merit increase. If you did your job well and got a good review, you got 6%. Which offsets 6%. So that was a 12% increase every year, which kept pace or more with inflation back then. And so, even with that kind of job, I could afford seasons tickets for the Washington Capitals back then. I couldn't now. I mean, it was a pittance back then compared. There nobody in my having that job could buy that for now. It's incredible amount of money to go to these sporting events. But these are the things I wish more people talked about, and they don't. But that's the difference between populism and conservatism.
Yeah, they're both false. I think they're false dichotomies, Don. I mean, you talk about I was thinking about some of the points that, like, the talk radio talking heads of conservatism would, lash out against things like the social safety net, but not talk about all of the corporate welfare or the welfare that we give the military industrial complex or foreign aid, or especially foreign aid to places like Israel. And, they would turn a blind eye and they would be doublespeak. The Chamber of Commerce, who's, National Chamber of Commerce is typically your country club Republican types, love mass illegal immigration because they can have their illegal alien maids and they can, pay things under the table and, pay cash wage, all that stuff and not workers' comp and all the other stuff. And turning a blind eye to that at the same time, run candidates like in my home state here in Texas for my entire lifetime. They've grifted and that's, grifters on patrol is what I call the GOP, or on the prowl, because all they're doing is just grifting from you, taking from you, and running on the same things over and over and over again. Meanwhile, their idea of economic stimulus has never worked. No. You can go back to the Reagan administration and the Laffer curve and Art Laffer and all that stuff. Yep. And trickle down economics.
Yep.
Saw a meme the other day. Just saw this guy. It's like urinating on a homeless man. It was like, this is the trickle down economics that Reagan was talking about. And that was like an actual poster from the 80s, like some guy stand there with his suit on. It's like, this is trickle down economics. Really, those are false, because the left would say, well, they're incoherent, but they're just, whatever the left is now is whatever the state is. Like, just as the bigger the state, we love money printing. We don't like, if you look at the partisanship over the cryptocurrency bills. Why in the hell is cryptocurrency a partisan issue? That's so weird to me. Why is regulation on cryptocurrency or the acknowledgement that it exists somehow partisan? But every Democrat voted against the stable coins and Bitcoin acts and the anti-CBDC, every one of them voted against it. It was a lockstep. So not one Democrat voted for that. That's so strange. But it has. I mean, the Democrats don't believe, or the left doesn't believe in any empowerment on any financial stuff whatsoever, just from the state. And then you have the other side of the whatever the aisle is, which doesn't really exist. But you have the other side that is, you know, their welfare queens are big agra, big pharma, you know, the military industrial complex, as I mentioned earlier, all of that. And they're both wrong. Neither one of them are going to move the ball forward for anybody who actually wants to do anything. The reason this country's in the shape that it's in is because we bail out these giant corporations, and they can walk between the raindrops. These aren't real entrepreneurs. These aren't real risk takers. And we punish people who try to come up the social ladder. That's why we still have these the tax code, Don, like all of that. Just that's why the rich love the tax code. And then you have the false stuff like AOC wearing her dress to the gala in New York City saying, you know, eat the rich. Well, that the rich fund you. So they love what you do. They want you to tax them more or tax the tax code more, because that makes sure that they keep their wealth forever. And it's really ridiculous that there is an ingenuity and a spirit of, look at what you could do in places like Detroit, Don, if there was incentivized and trust, and there was deregulation, I think that America should build things again.
Of course. And that's what people don't understand is that, you know, I tried to say, and first of all, I want to say thank you to the lovely Karen Carpenter and the lovely Mary Ellen Moore. She talked about Mary Ellen Moore has a book club, and they're reading American Memory Hole now. So I appreciate that, anybody who's reading it. So thanks so much for putting my book on in your reading club. But that's people don't realize, again, when they talk about, they shame people and they call them unskilled labor. Most of America most of the world is unskilled labor. You know, what do you mean? Because I hear all the time, sir, you get some skills. What do you mean skills? Learn to code. Like all the other millions of people that learn to code and can't beat out foreign visa workers because they're being paid half the price. That's not the answer to anything. What you had an industrial base. We don't even have an industry anymore, let alone an industrial base. But you're talking about Detroit, the bombed out Detroit, and all the factories that used to be there and elsewhere. People worked there who were all unskilled labor. Many, if not most of them, certainly no college graduates and probably not many high school graduates. Yet they were able to achieve a middle-class lifestyle, learning the assembly line work that pretty much anybody can do. But it was valuable work, and it made better cars than we can make now somehow, you know, with the technology we have. And that kind of thing where we produced stuff. We made stuff. And so they had I'm contributing. Henry Ford, you know, famously noted back then when he gave raises to his people making the Model Ts, you know, the other business leaders say, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I've got to pay them enough to buy my product."
Yes.
Business doesn't seem to realize that they're not paying people enough to buy what you're building. But the problem is we're not building anything now. So I guess that makes sense because we don't have any products to sell. But that's why Trump's tariffs are right. We do need tariffs, but he's doing it ass backwards, his typical Trumpenstein style. Build the factories first. Replenish the factories in your big, beautiful bill. Why don't you save some money? The incredible amount of money you threw back into the military-industrial complex, throw some money there into revitalizing factories, restoring the factories in Detroit and elsewhere, and new factories. That would be great if you did that and you started. But again, I don't see any of that. So it's just dreaming to say we're going to put tax. Somebody in the chat room was talking about. I think in Germany, they were talking about trying to buy a product and they couldn't because of the tariff that was on it. So it's apparently a real thing. But yeah, I think that we need to stop shaming people and that's what we do now. That's what boomers should know better. There were a lot of boomers like me that didn't go to college and ended up having a pretty good life. And we shouldn't be shaming people who are in the same boat as we were educationally and skill-wise, but there were jobs out where you could get that paid enough and, you know, stayed there long enough and you got, you know, some seniority, you got some benefits from it. That doesn't exist for people today. And not only that, the people even that were not even as skilled as me, I guess, but they ended up, getting factory jobs. And this included the black middle class, which thrived back then. There were a lot of people that worked those jobs that you would just, with today's people, they would shame them as, oh, you're unskilled labor. Well, you're not non-essential, unskilled, the non-essential stuff we found out about during COVID. But these were people that built the middle class, that made America, that really did make America great in that post-war period, which is really the time America was at its best, at its zenith. But I tell conservatives all the time, you realize, during that time, America had a top tax rate of 90%. That's what the wealthiest people were paying. So, but somehow it was the best economy we ever had, because JFK famously cut the tax rates down to 70-some percent, I think. And then, of course, Reagan slashed the top rate from 72 to 28%, I think. And somehow people, you don't think that's going to have some ramifications? 72 to 28%. That's, that's an unbelievable cut. But anyway, you're kind of all over the place as usual. But those people still exist. The people that worked in the factories are still around today. Some of them may be in the chat room as we exist now, but they don't have any factories to go work in.
That's true. And, that's the disparity between being able to have a living wage job that made something, and that's a production economy, which is, I float between libertarian free market and paleo conservative traditional economic nationalism. I float somewhere in there. And I think like what you talked about with Huey Long, most people don't realize, I mean, his idea was if you adjust it for inflation, like you've mentioned, if you made $12 million a year or less, you paid no income tax, something like that. It was like, it was like 12 million. If you made 12 million a year or less, you paid no income tax. After that, you couldn't become a giant conglomerate monopolistic thing. And by the way, monopolies are not free market. Monopolies are when they get enough, this is human nature, and they start to control legislatures and they control outcomes to protect themselves. It's like it starts an organism, it starts having an immune system, and it protects itself and its wealth and from outside threats. And that could be competition or could be regulation or whatever. And even if and this is what's happened in America the last 100+ years, is that these entities have supported higher taxes, and they've supported, and by the way, those tax cuts are ethereal. If you're a real person, if you're an entrepreneur or you're making things and you're in that, window of like, maybe you got some rental houses and you got a convenience store, the tax rate doesn't really mess with you at all. Not really. You've got deductions, you got other things. That's only like some pie in the sky thing about moving money around in capital gains and stuff. It doesn't really affect you. And that's where they want that. They want the regulation in the highest and the most hardest to navigate down in the middle, somewhere in the middle where you just can't get over the hump. And, the flip side of all of this is that if you could talk to younger people about learning a skill where you can fix something, if you can fix an appliance, if you can do through securely through doing electrical work and things like that, you can make a fortune helping and just doing and building things. I think the skilled labor and skilled things, making stuff, especially as an aging infrastructure, a massive fortune to be made and a lot of upside to that. But we continue to, because of this revolving door of get into some, Frankfurt School, cultural Marxism factory called a university or college, and then also here take $200,000 out in debt that you can't pay back because the jobs you go and make are paying $35,000 a year. This is just it perpetuates this underclass, Don, and I think that the answer, if you want to bring back the American dream, the answer would be incentivize skill trade. I love seeing, like, I was the other day I was here at my house in Denison, and there's an issue with the railroad track, and they parked all this big equipment in front of here, like these cranes and stuff. I think they had a derailed train down the road, and I thought, all those guys showing up in the evening, hey, we're getting to work. People don't realize how much we take for granted the people that keep everything on, the people that run the power plants, the people that run you know, the train stations with this aging infrastructure and all the stuff that we don't pay attention to. You know, the people that you call to fix something, like and in those things are shrinking. It's harder and harder to find good help. It's harder and harder to find people to fix that kind of stuff, and we don't put enough emphasis on it.
Right. This Duke Valentino, please email me. He's asking me a million questions about shedding and stuff, and I think he's saying, why don't I ever talk about I think it's news, but read my Substack. I've been talking a lot about them lately. I'm writing a new one about that too. I'm not done holding back from that, but I think that it's a question of, this is why populism is the answer. You know, conservatism and liberalism both. They're basically what Huey Long said back about Republicans, Democrats, twin high papa low'em and low papa high'em, the twin towers of disaster. And as he said, it doesn't matter, who the waiters are, when the cooks are always from Wall Street. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're being served the same stuff. The waiters may look different. The Democrats have, they may be black and transgender and all that, and somehow that'll make you happy, but it's still the same food, and it's going to be the same food if it's all white people doing it, so it's all white men, but with MAGA hats. So the idea is we have to look at the disparity of wealth. When you have half your country, the bottom 50% has less than 1% of the collective wealth. Duke Valentinos, how do I get in contact with you? Author Jeffries at gmail.com. AUTHOR Jeffries, JEFFRIES at gmail.com. Email me. I'll have you on the show if you're legitimate. If you're all from, I want to hear what's going on in Ireland firsthand. But so if you, but we don't hear any popular. You have Bernie Sanders nibbled around the edges at populism, and and more economic than Trump. Trump nibbled around the edges. But that's it. You don't hear nobody. And that's why I say, you talk about a winning political issue. Huey Long had, I think, 12 million members of the Share Our Wealth Society at the time of his death, which is a lot back then. America was a lot smaller. I don't know what that would equate to today. Probably, I don't know, maybe 100 million. I don't know. But it was a lot. It was a very big thing. And people could understand it even more now, because it's all that time removed now. What happened is the post-war boom cured a lot of those ills and made us more of an even-handed society than we've ever been before. And he said he's in Ireland, Donnie's probably drunk. Don't castigate my people like that. Those are my people. It could be true then. But so when you have so many people benefited from it, including people that didn't even really know what they're doing, people that lucked out like me. I had bold ambitions. I wanted to be a songwriter. I wanted to be something big, but fortunately I ended up being a published author, which was my dream. But along that time, I kind of meandered around, making a lot less money than I should have, because I wasn't really interested in climbing up the ladder. I was interested in these kind of creative things, but I was still able to do it. Somebody like me couldn't do that today. You couldn't do that. You'd have to, just to work in IT where I worked, you have to get all these certifications now. They were starting that when I didn't have a single certification, but I would have had to go back and pay $3,000 or something back then for everything I already knew just to get certified. Fortunately, they hadn't made us do that yet, but they probably would have if I had stayed. And so that it's these opportunities are just not there for people. So I hate it when they shame young people and say they don't want to work and they're snowflakes. And maybe that's there's some of that, maybe. But the idea is that you need to give people opportunities. And I understand young people. Why should I? If the world's messed up, I know it's screwed up. They have to know it. They see, I don't even think they have parties anymore for young people. When I was young, that's what I lived for, parties. That's where I met everybody I ever knew. And I don't think they have them anymore. I don't know what they do. They go on dating apps and they, slide to the right and stuff. And I don't even understand that. And I think most guys don't do very well there. So they end up not having their relationships. It shows. So many people aren't in relationships. You have the American loneliness phenomenon, people living by themselves. You have marriage rates plummeting, birth rates plummeting, where you have that majority of women saying they're not interested in having children. all this is contributing. I talked about that. They're all contributing to the death of the American dream. Because the American dream is focused on the family. And if you don't want to have a family, or at least a traditional family, obviously you're not interested in the American dream. And economically, it made it impossible. But I wish we'd see some more populists, some real populists, but I don't know. They don't, and I'm sure if somebody did come out saying a lot of the things I'd say, probably he'd probably be co-opted, or the whole media would say he was co-opted. I'd probably fall in love with him like I do.
Oh, and Don, on top of this, you introduce AI, and which I talked about on my show Thursday on the Art of Bird Radio transmission. When you introduce AI into this system now, into the matrix of things, holy hell, the layoffs that it's going, I'm reading that, just from people that are really study the economy and the effects on the, the economic consequences of artificial intelligence. I mean, this is going to it's going to wipe out a lot of things. It may wipe out all of us just because of the automation and the inability to think, which is bizarre to me. It's funny, like the more knowledge that people have been introduced to, the less frame of references they have, and the quality of speech and the quality of thinking and everything goes down for some reason. I don't know why that is. Like the more ubiquitous knowledge is, the less people have it. So interesting how that works, but especially the introduction of AI into the perceived, what we used to believe is the American dream as an ownership society. I don't even know where that ends up. Again, I think there's some real world things you can do if you want to better your position. But the traditional model is definitely gone. And I agree with that. It was nice to know you, American dream.
Yeah, it was nice to know you. And then again, the that's not even, I didn't really go into that much in AI, but obviously that factors in as well. You don't have any industry, you don't have jobs. Again, despite what Trump is saying, you have tariffs, but you don't have industry. You don't have any domestic competition to compete with the foreign goods that you're putting tariffs on. So obviously that's only going to make prices rise. That's not doing any good. It's not building industry back. But and you have AI they're telling you is going to take over any number of jobs. We don't know how many jobs are going to be taken over by that. And the AI is also influenced socially. So you have AI companions now, not only sex bots, which are eventually going to come, I guess, too. You have and already there, but you have AI companions where you can become friends, real. And I can easily see people, they're already playing video games, especially lonely guys. So why wouldn't they? The girl's got a sexy voice, maybe a sexy avatar, and she's going to tell you what you want to hear. I can easily see that becoming, and that's you can't have a civilization, like at least not any kind of traditional civilization. That's the reality, though. And I don't think AI is going to, I talked about this in differential app, but if they have, I think already they have like a 1500 IQ AI or something, which is 10 times beyond the highest IQ we have, as humans. I said, okay, well, they should be able to figure out the meaning of life. They should be able to extend life technology, but they won't. You need to look at that stuff because they never do. Nothing ever happens that helps people. And that's why I say the only prediction I make is whatever happens, whatever these people do, it's not going to be something that improves the lives of the people.
Yeah, ask it. Tell us how to keep our politicians from careening us off into war. I mean, how do we stop, rotating these people through the halls of power that are sociopathic, narcissistic warmongers? How do we stop that? How do we stop? I mean, you're right. I mean, you asked that it's not going to cure cancer. It's not going to do any of those things. And if it does, it'll probably be somebody will pull the plug on it. Right now, it's interesting because if you look at the AI and you ask it questions, it doesn't censor itself yet. Not all the time, and then especially when you're talking about things of the conspiracy realm for finances and the dollar and other things. I found that's interesting. Like it already knows, and it's based off of the collective algorithm of things, so it knows that that's fake. Well, Don, we're right at the end here of America Unplugged. Unfortunately, I'll always love it when it's the Don and Tony show. We have a different kind of America Unplugged, and you want to tell people where they can find you and recognize anybody in the chat while you're because people are on your YouTube.
That's some great. Chris Bucket and Duke Valentine are having a real interesting discussion. They're talking about all kinds of stuff. Lots of great people. Twisted, who I like seeing over on X. Kenneth and Powers, Noam Spirited Puppy, GBGN1, Kian Akuma, Don Lambert, lovely Don Lambert. Let's see who else did I know Karen Carpenter was in there, of course.
I saw Vince Agnelli's in the chat as
Vince,
well.
of course, Vince Agnelli, Helen Rundell, Dustin D. Helm. Freely speaking, my friend Australian Ben from the land down under. Let's see. There's the Harps, of course, another from the fake Australia. Let's see. I think that's
Speaking of the land down under, I sat next to an Australian yesterday who works for SpaceX. And when I was coming back from LA on the plane, and he works for SpaceX and does the Starlink satellites. And we just got into it. We got into a conversation about, the nature of things and the space program. And of course, flat Earth came up because he'd sat next to a flat earther, and they kept asking him, what about the dome? Do your satellites bounce off the dome? He's like, no, I put a bunch of them into space. Like, there's no dome. He's like, I'll watch them and I program them, and it's funny to hear, you sit next to somebody who made that's their whole life is doing that.
Yeah. It's funny, but so that people can just please support me. We're talking about my Substack, the latest one, and it's Donald Jeffries at Substack. I'm hoping everybody in the chat room subscribes to me. Substack, if not, shame on you. It's Donald Jeffries at Substack.com. It's I Protest, just like my weekly live streaming podcast. Sorry I had to cancel yesterday, but the last minute cancellation. I had something going on in the family, so hope we'll be back next week. But again, I thank everybody for that, and that's the only place I'm not shadow banned. So Substack is where you can support me the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Go support Don on his Substack and DonaldJeffries.media. Go subscribe. If you got anything you can do to support Don's work, buy his books. I always make sure that I plug Don, because we need actual research in this sea of nonsense, ladies and gents. And it is nonsense. You go into this space, and I definitely can't do traditional media because it's garbage, and I can't do conservative talk because it's garbage. So I'm in alternative media because you need an alternative, and then some of it is just ridiculous and stupid. So that's why you need Don Jeffries around. He's one of the last of the greats, folks. So please go support him. You can find.
I'm sorry, Chris Graves is in the chat room too. Good to see you, Chris. Sorry, but I noticed you're up there earlier. Hope you're doing well, buddy.
Yeah, good to see Chris in the chat. And I want to make sure that we acknowledge our folks over on Rumble. Thanks for joining the Rumble stream. We got a good amount of folks in the chat over there. Knights of the Storm says he put together a Wolfpack unboxing. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And we'll get that out on social media. Anybody, if you like your Wolfpack from Wise Wolf Gold and Silver, you like your Wolfpack.gold items, and you want to send us something, please do. We'll put it up on social media. All right. Well, Arterburn.gold, folks. You want to get in touch with me, Arterburn.gold or Tony.gold. Same website. You can subscribe to the website. Check out Wise Wolf Gold and Silver for all your precious metals needs. And we're also into Wise Wolf Bitcoin. So if you've got Bitcoin, you want to turn into gold and silver, you want to sell it to us, buy from us, those things. I'm working on all of the assets and all the things you can do. All the options are available at Wise Wolf. So give us an email, a call, or a text anytime. All right. Let's see what next week we'll be back. Hopefully Billy will be here. Always miss him. He tells us to burn the place down now. I'm glad he got the sufficient insurance. So I'm gonna play us out. I'm just waiting for Billy to give me my cue, but he's not here. He's not cueing me out. So I'll play us out. How's that sound? All right. Thanks, folks. And give us a review over on Apple or anywhere podcasts are found. We appreciate you.